That's a great thing about being a Brit in acting, is that sort of icy dripping with passive-aggressive, sort of totally cut off from your emotions, comes really easily. I had to sort of just become besotted with Paul Mescal, which wasn't difficult, but I think as an actor you have to be a bit of an idiot. Got to Gosford Park, slap on a wig, slap on a costume, grab an accent out of the bag. On set, we did one take in shadow and one take in sunshine. He said, yeah, I think I got it. And I'm like, what?
Hello and welcome to the BIFA Podcast, supported by Kia, hosted by me, Joy Hunter.
And me, Karis, Aldridge. Each week we'll talk to a brand new guest about their journey into film, their most inspiring cinema-going experiences, and what makes independent film so special.
It's another week of us fangirling over our favourite film stars, isn't it, Karis?
It is indeed, and this week was big fangirl energy because we were talking to the incredible
Emily Watson. Wow.
She has had such a decorated career. She's had 4 BIFA nominations, BAFTAs, Emmy nominations. Amongst all of those incredible awards, she's about to top it off with something incredibly brilliant at the end of this year.
She sure is. We're very excited because Emily Watson is going to be this year's recipient of the Richard Harris Award at BIFA, which celebrates an outstanding contribution to acting, which she certainly has. So it was so exciting to talk about her career, starting out with her first role, which was in Lars von Trier's Breaking the Waves, which saw her get an Oscar nomination.
Yeah, we spoke about Hilary and Jackie, which was her second Oscar nomination, which was a couple of years after Breaking the Waves. And then we talk about some of her more recent titles, whether that's Small Things Like These or Steve, both of which including her collaborator Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, we had a little chat about her Paul Thomas Anderson film Punch Drunk Love, and she's also played roles as Paul Mescal's mum not once but twice in both God's Creatures and Hamnet. So yeah, she was absolutely chock full of advice and amazing stories and anecdotes from all of her work across the years. So it really was a privilege to get to chat to her and celebrate her career. So without further ado, please enjoy our chat with the wonderful Emily Watson. Emily Watson.
Hello.
Welcome to the BIFA
Thank you.
Podcast. We're very, very happy to have you here. It's so
It's a
exciting.
real honour.
Delighted to be here.
We're very excited to celebrate your work because you're about to receive the Richard Harris Award at the BIFAs 2025, which is super exciting.
It is.
Can we ask you a bit about that? Where were you when you were rung up and told that you were going to get the award?
I was running around, I think, trying to get to the airport, trying to organise my family, trying to be a billion different people. And I kept missing calls, and I was like, I want to speak to you in person. I said, no, just email me. So I read it in an email.
Nice.
But it was very delicious thing to hear, especially as I am friends with Jared Harris, and I've heard him speak about his dad with such love and such joy and such sense of celebration. So yeah, a little bit took my breath away.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, it's always so exciting to see the award winners come through and give their speech and celebrate an outstanding contribution to acting. And I was just thinking, Michael Gambon won the Richard Harris one year, and you worked together on Gosford Park. So
Yes, we did.
Yeah, nice
and
link.
again on Little Women,
Yes.
quite a few years later. He was such an inspirational person. He was so anarchic. And he was so brilliantly suited to being in Gosford Park because that's what Robert Altman was. He was like, well, in Hollywood they make movies and I do everything differently. The spirit of how he made films was very, very democratic and loose and free. He had a company called Sandcastle because making a movie is like building a sandcastle.
Nice.
You make a sandcastle on the beach and then you sit back in a deck chair and you drink a beer and you watch the tide take it away. And
That's a great image. I love that.
And I happened to work with him when he was like 78, I think, when we shot Gosford Park. And Michael Gambon just was on the set. The idea that you could just sort of run away with things and improvise and, turn things on their head and do things differently it was like catnip to Michael Gambon. Was just incredibly anarchic. I once saw him on stage at the National behaving so badly that the whole cast were on their knees in hysterics. It was, it was beautiful to behold. But yeah, no, he was the perfect actor to be in that scenario.
Just been rewatching Gosford Park and it was just such a romp, and talk about stacked cast.
Yeah,
I mean,
terrifying.
Yeah, it was.
Oh my God.
What an incredible I mean,
Yes.
what a shoot that must have been.
It
What can you tell us
really,
about being on that set?
really was terrifying, but kind of exhilarating. And Robert Altman said, you know, you get that many egos in a room and they kind of police themselves because nobody could really be top dog. I mean, I guess there was a top dog and it was Maggie, but even so, you know, nobody played that card. It was all, everybody was incredibly respectful. I remember walking on set one day and there were several illustrious actors and actresses, knights of the realm, you know, kind of real icons sitting around one of those little gas heaters with polystyrene cups of tea. And because we all had these wigs, I mean, the wig truck in the morning had to get about 30 people through in quick succession. Like you had your slot, you had to be on time, and it was like
military
through. So we were all
Wig
sitting there
operation.
with these wigs because it was bad weather. You had to wear a little plastic bonnet over your wig.
Perfect.
So there they all are sitting round this fire with their polystyrene cups of tea, and I just remember them talking. They were talking about it. Said, "Did you see the reviews? Performance of a lifetime." It's like it never grows old. But I mean, I love that idea that those kind of experiences, it's the campfire of life, and you learn so much just from being around those people and listening to their stories. And you know, I always say to young actors, do not, whatever you do, bring your phone to set, because you will miss the most amazing, you know, it's the stuff that slips down the cracks in between that's really fabulous.
Oh, yeah, that's the magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love the thought of you all gossiping on that set, because the film's like kind of about gossip.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, like art imitating life. I love
And
that.
also Robert Altman as a director was somebody, he just wanted to wrong foot you in the nicest possible way. But I remember when I started that movie, I had come from LA. They'd already been shooting for 2 weeks because I'd been on Punch Drunk Love with Paul Thomas Anderson. Oh my God, I sound like the most privileged
PTA?
brat.
No, please.
No, come on, we're here to fangirl over it all, Emily, don't you worry.
But having had an experience where he was, every moment was poured over and curated in the most brilliantly attentive way. You know, he would do so many takes. He's the only director who's ever picked me up at the airport himself.
Wow.
I got to there and he was there with his car, you know, picked me. And then I remember when we were rehearsing early on, we were sitting in his office and there was a poor guy from the transport company coming in with photographs of cars that he wanted to have for the opening shot, but there's a car crash in the opening shot, and the particular shade of orange, I think it wasn't quite right, and he was showing him pages and pages and pages photographs of cars that they could use for this car crash. Everything had to be so just right, in a really off-kilter way, and you had to kind of just find that groove. Anyway, I digress. So having gone from that very precise way of working, and it had its own freedom, but in a very different way. Got to Gosford Park, slap on a wig, slap on a costume, grab an accent out of the bag, on set, and we did the very last scene of the movie where I have a dog in a bag and a wig and an accent, and it's the sort of final moment of this character. We did one take in shadow with a cloud and one take in sunshine. He said, "Yeah, I think I got it." And I'm like, "What?"
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
He said, "I'm not interested in the bit where you've worked out what you're going to do."
Oh, interesting.
He's just like wants all the actors behind the door, open the door, everybody falls in and see what happens.
Oh, brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, it was anarchy in the best possible sense.
Yeah, everyone's got such differing approaches. Because you wanted to ask a bit about the PTA shoot and the reshoot.
Oh, I'm just really fascinated because it sounds like it was a fairly complicated production.
The first week, my first week anyway, we did the same material every day for a week, but because of the light, we were shooting in a block-up garage kind of warehousey place in the valley, and we only shot at sunrise. So we went back every day, and he said it's like laying down a track. You know, you just go back and try it again, and it's slightly different the next day. It was a very different experience. I couldn't sort of turn up knowing what I wanted to do and have everything planned. You had to be really prepared to go with his flow of how he saw things, and that was, you know, it was sort of changing and evolving, and it was also very much a film that was he decided he wanted to make a 90-minute romantic comedy.
Well, exactly, because before that, his films were quite these like vignette-y, long,
very, very sprawling.
Exactly.
Altman-esque.
Yes.
Ensemble pieces, and this was very
such
different.
A departure.
And he sort of pulled himself in that direction as far as he could. But he's just so original. Making a movie with him is like just the adventure of being around him. That's what it's like. And that's what I said to him when I watched One Battle After Another the other day. I said, this is the movie that feels the most like knowing you. It's just a wild ride. And everything is just not what you expect and really crazy.
Oh, wow. It was so interesting to know that that's the most embodied.
He's a very intoxicatingly excited person.
Nice.
That's a great way to be described. I hope someone describes me like that one day.
About so many things. It's a thrill.
Yeah. I think he announced that he was going to do Punch Drunk Love at the Cannes Film Festival, and I think he had said to people, "Oh, Adam Sandler's going to be in it," and everyone laughed because at that point people had only seen Adam Sandler as a pure comedic actor. And I think you were saying that it's funny to think of you watching Sandler movies at home while he's watching, Breaking the Waves and his like Hollywood mansion. But how did you find approaching that and kind of figuring out how you were going to work with Sandler?
I mean, I loved him from the off. He's a really genuine, funny, just lovely, lovely person. In a way, very shy. I mean, he's not. He's outrageous as well. He's completely outrageous. But he has a sort of sense of being. He's kind of keeps himself fairly carefully close until suddenly the moment when it all goes off. And in a way, working with PTA in Hollywood didn't feel very Hollywood. It felt off-kilter indie territory, which was maybe a little bit more familiar to me than it was to Adam. But it was like the rhythms of the three of us. We had all our different ways, just made an interesting dance, I guess.
And I think when you were having those early conversations with him, you had said, no crying, no dying. Is that right?
Well, that was kind of the conversation we had, because I think I'd done Breaking the Waves and Hilary and Jackie and The Boxer and, a lot of things that were very... Devastating.
In the best way.
Yeah. And he had done all these big, long, sprawling movies. He said, well, I want to do, a 90-minute romantic comedy, kind of. So it was just a sense of being there for the ride when somebody was trying to change everything, change what they were doing, and which is always interesting. Somebody wants to do something new.
I'm a huge Punch Drunk Love fan. I absolutely love it. I really feel like its language and the tone of it is something that you have seen so many other directors pay homage to, like the Safdies, and you really see how that film. And the nature of it has made such an impact. I feel like it would be great to kind of go back a little bit to Hilary and Jackie.
Yeah.
Because it's such a fabulous film about two sisters who are these kind of incredibly talented musicians. What was it about that script or the project in general that really enticed you? Because it's very, very demanding, both from just like physically playing a cellist and having to get the physicality of that right, and then later she obviously develops MS and you really see that deterioration kind of physically and mentally of her character. What was it about that?
My knowledge of her before they approached me about it was I knew her recording of the Elgar Cello Concerto, which is truly extraordinary piece of work. That somebody that young would have the emotional depth of Elgar's sense of painful nostalgia, and I it's difficult to characterize exactly what it is, but it is absolutely, it plays, it's like the strings of the cello are your heartstrings. That piece of music, it's extraordinary. But then we started talking about it before there was a script, and I was like, well, where's the drama? And they gave me the book to read, which was her sister's story of them growing up together and what happened to their relationship and all of those things. And I have to say, looking back on it now, with the benefit of years and hindsight, I feel slightly uncomfortable about it. The company that put the film together, they have a documentary background, and there was a real sense of, artists have messy lives, and this was her sister's story. But I think probably there were people for whom it was painful to have that story told in public. I'm very grateful to it, because it was just such an incredible story and such an amazing character and a journey to go on, and to be that stretched as an actor, to have to learn to play the cello and inhabit that incredible artistry, and then the whole thing about learning about the disease that she suffered from. You know, it was a huge undertaking for me as a young actor. But yeah, I mean, I was in there with all 4 feet before I was just like so taken with it and loved doing it, felt very passionately about it. You know, but over time you kind of look back on these things and you think, wow, that must have been hard for some of the people around it.
Yeah, there's always a question, I guess, around the license that people take in creating art and how it's then received. But I think you have a bit more clarity once there's a bit of time, isn't there?
You do, yeah. But also now I've been successful, and I'm the other side of being a bit ambitious young actress, and you know, you don't sort of see things in the same way.
Yeah, it has such a fabulous cast. Cillian Murphy plays your mother, who we actually had on the podcast not too long ago. Yeah. She's so fabulous. Another very playful actor on set. I wonder whether or not that was your experience with her.
I've worked with her a couple of times actually. She was also in Wawa, which was Richard E. Grant's story of his childhood.
Yes,
she's just
nominated.
So much fun. I mean, obviously, you've spent time with her. She's very naughty, very witty and precise, and just joyous.
We were obsessed with her. She was fantastic.
She was amazing. Yeah, just to be in her presence for an hour was incredible. She was really, really amazing as your mother, and obviously you were Oscar nominated.
I was,
and that was the second time.
It was.
In about two years.
Yes, that all happened. It was a
real
very
explosion onto the scene. It must have been such an overwhelming time for you, as I guess you were in your kind of late 20s, early 30s.
I was, when I did Breaking the Waves, I was 26, 27, I think, yeah.
So young. So how was that experience for you, being recognised immediately by the industry? How were you processing all of that at that time?
Yeah, it must have been a whirlwind.
It was pretty wild. I mean, to be honest, weirdly, it was a bit like being in a slow motion car crash in a good way. but that's sort of just not being able to process things, just like being a bit frozen, really, just like to go from a very sort of, you know, I had a fairly quiet life, you know, before that, and I'd come from a very secluded, quite strange upbringing. I didn't have a youth that was very much joining in particularly. There were bits of it that I felt like I'd missed out of, and suddenly I was being amplified on a big screen, not just in movies, but I was in the press. I was doing all these events and feeling very unsure if all these people think they see me and I don't know who I am. You know, I really felt pretty unsure of myself and probably couldn't even admit that. You know, I look back on myself doing interviews and I sort of have this very fake sense of certainty, like I know what I'm doing and I know what's going on, and I really didn't.
Yeah, I think that's being in your mid-20s.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm sure.
Yes. It's embarrassing to look back and go, oh, wow, I had no idea. You're so certain in the moment, you know. Yeah.
But it really was quite, you know, exponential, violent being chucked into the deep end.
Like a real baptism of fire, I can imagine.
It must have been. So you had those 2 Oscar nominations, but it seems like beyond that you were quite smart and intentional about your choices after that, because I'm sure a lot of opportunities would have come your way. What drew you to those projects that you did after those nominations?
I mean, I remember a day, my agent, Sally, we were sitting in the Four Seasons in LA, and this was pretty early on, and she had an A4 pad in front of her. And she said, well, Emily, this is the list of things that you've been offered, which is crazy. When you get nominated for an Oscar, suddenly everybody wants you. And we just sat there laughing hysterically because it just felt so surreal. Unreal.
Yeah.
So bizarre that we were there in LA at the Four Seasons going through this list of things. But with her guidance, and I think a very big part of this story of my early life is actually my husband, who I had met at the Royal Shakespeare Company before any of this happened, and we are creative kind of soulmates. We discuss everything, we appreciate the same things, we have the same kind of creative values, and just having that sounding board and not going, oh, that's a lot of money, I'll do that, knowing that somehow wouldn't last. That what was going to have longevity, was a currency that had kind of creative integrity to it. I wouldn't have been able to articulate that at the time.
Yeah.
But instinctively, those were the things, like, it was just, let's do good work. Let's not worry about other things. We'll just kind of somehow we'll find our way. But that was the draw.
We're briefly interrupting this programme to let you know that your favourite cinema needs you.
This year, BIFA have launched the inaugural Cinema of the Year Awards, supported by Kia and decided by you.
Nothing beats the feeling of watching a brilliant film on the big screen, and so we want to celebrate the cinemas that allow us to do just that. Cinemas at the heart of their communities that bring audiences together and champion independent film.
Voting is now open for cinema goers to decide the winner of Cinema of the Year. So if you love your local cinema, now is your chance to prove it.
Head to the show notes of this episode for the link to cast your vote, and tune in to BIFA's social media on Sunday 30th of November to find out all of the winners for BIFA 2025. Talking about your sort of earlier days at the RSC on stage before going into screen, were there other learnings from that time that have helped you?
Yes, very much so. I mean, just spending a lot of time with Shakespeare, of course. He's the great humanist, but also understanding the rhythm of language and have it as your heartbeat, as your blood, as your... I was very fortunate to take part in a workshop with the late, great Cicely Berry, who is the voice coach, and she had a way of talking to actors which was about just bringing out your voice in a way that was authentically just you. And I remember an actor, Ron Cook, he's a wonderful actor, and he was talking about when he was a young man, he was playing Richard III, or was it Richard? I can't remember. He was doing one of those plays. And she did a one-on-one workshop with him. And she said to him, what do you really love doing? And he said, I like football. And she got him to do all his speeches kicking a football around.
Oh, wow.
And it was just a way of freeing him, freeing his voice. And that's always been a touchstone for me, is like, how do I find myself freely in this? Where am I in this? And to this day, that's something I do, is I pick up a ball. I did that with Paul Mescal when I played his mum in God's Creatures. It's like we'd been sitting rehearsing on Zoom because it was all locked down for 2 weeks.
Of course,
Everybody in their own room, in their own cottage on the coast of Donegal. And when we finally were out of quarantine in a room together, it was like, pick up a ball and let's start throwing it around. And I didn't know at that time that he was like a...
Oh, he used to play like rugby or...
Yeah,
oh, gosh,
he's
like
Irish.
Basically semi-professional.
Yeah. I was like,
He was like, you really want to do that?
But then going back to that workshop, Edward Bond had this theory, or he had a sort of thesis, that you have to find what is the central line in any piece of work, what is the DNA of its meaning, before you then start working on your own part of it, so that as a company you really discover what something's about, and then every choice you make is related to that. And we worked on his play Jackets. It's a story of two lads in the Troubles in Northern Ireland. There's two lads in the British Army, and they go off and they're on patrol somewhere, and then one of them is shot. And I might be getting the details of this wrong because it's a long time ago and I don't remember it very well. But anyway, their mums, one of them goes to identify the body in the morgue, and the other one's mum comes with her as support. And when they get there, they realise that they had swapped jackets and been wrongly identified. And it's just an incredibly powerful scene. And he said, the central line of this is the stage direction, that as the trolley is pushed into the room, the wheel squeaks. And we were all like, what are you talking about? But actually, when you really went into it, you realised that was the moment before this woman's life changed irrevocably forever. And that sound would be the most powerful and evocative thing that she would ever have at that moment of change. It's like, do you remember when a smell, you remember a smell that comes from a very powerful moment in your life. And that workshop had a very profound effect on me, because it's about as an actor learning, this isn't about you, it's about something much bigger than you. And you work, once you get over that hump of feeling embarrassed and feeling it's about you and trying to work out who you are and start serving a story, that's like such a relief, you know, and it sets you free in a way that's great.
Yeah, that lack of ego.
Yes.
With it. And sort of giving yourself over totally, which I think a lot of people do laud your work for, the way you sort of melt totally into these different roles. People talk a lot about your performance in Breaking the Waves being a big inspiration for them. And that's such a raw, free performance, kind of in the ways that you were describing. Were there any similar, like playing football with Paul Mescal, things that you were doing to get you into that role?
I just didn't know any better. I think that's partly it. I was talking about this before. I think as an actor, you have to be a bit of an idiot. You have to still be that kid who somewhere deep down you kind of think it's real. You know, of course, you know it's not real, and you're making it up, and it's someone's going to say cut, but if you could release yourself into that somehow. Stellan Skarsgård, who was obviously we were partners in crime throughout that film, and I was so lucky that it was him, because he was such a wonderful role model, because he cares passionately about all the things that matter. And he said to me very early on, because I obviously hadn't done anything at all before, and I said to him, what is screen acting? What do you do? Help.
Good person to ask.
He said to me, don't aim for anything, just let go. And that's always been a struggle, you know, because you want to have your ducks in a row, you want to know what you're doing, you want to not fall flat on your face, but to actually have the prescience to have everything lined up and have it all planned and have it all, you know, you've done the work, you've done the prep, you've done everything, and then to go, okay, I'm going to let go. I actually have to say that brings me sort of right fast forward to the present, to Jessie Buckley.
Yes.
Watching her work and talking about her and listening to her talk about her work, of her going, I genuinely have no idea what I'm going to do before she does all the prep and the work and everything, but I let the character show me the way. And going, oh yeah, as you get older, you've done a lot, you kind of get good at knowing how to solve problems and fix things, and actually, you know, that's not the most interesting way to work. Maybe just walk out there and be prepared to fall flat on your face and see what happens is really interesting. And obviously it has to be the right setup. You have to be in a safe space where that's possible. Yeah. Like Chloe Zhao, yes, for instance.
I'm sure.
Which we'll come to, I'm sure, and is truly an incredible privilege to be in that room. But yeah, that sort of, there's a real line of connection there with Stellan and Jessie. But also obviously in the middle of all of that is Stellan and Jared Harris.
Yes.
And Jessie in Chernobyl.
Talking of Jessie Buckley, she actually spoke to us about working with you on the LFF red carpet, which I'd love to show you.
Oh no.
If you don't mind.
Okay.
It's not going to be awful for you. It's so funny what you were saying about her giving herself over to the roles, because that's basically exactly what she said about you.
Emily Watson is the reason I want to try and become a better actress.
I think she's a giant in not just obviously independent cinema, but she's just one of the great working actors today.
When I first watched Breaking the Waves, it blew my mind. I thought, I want to do that. And if I can be as brave to be that raw and open and human in my career and in my life, I will be so proud of myself. She's been such an important woman to me in my life and in my work, and I feel very lucky to know her and love her.
So there you go.
Well, straight back at you, kids. Oh my God, those two.
Yes, what an amazing group.
I'm a little bit overwhelmed by that. But I have to say, though, that one of the things that the two of them have helped in Paul with God's Creatures and then both of them on Hamnet really made me realise that one of the most important things to me in being in this, you know, particularly the independent film community, is building those relationships, and particularly with younger people, because actually that's what makes you feel so alive with it. I mean, those two don't need anybody to tell them what to do. I don't know, just helping people feel seen and feel they've got the space and they've got, you know, particularly if you're working on something where you're doing television and you're working very quickly, people can do all the preparation in the world and have so many great ideas and stuff to bring, and then they get 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And to be able to help shape somebody to go, you need to stay in it and be that person and mine that moment and survive that moment and not be thrown by the billion annoying, troubling things that are going on around you, and concentrate and lose yourself in something. There's a generation of incredible younger actors who are so generous and so lovely. They're just, so many of them are really, really gifted and amazing and so hungry to discover things and so cultured and intelligent and well-read and just like, wow.
Yeah.
But I've got a lovely photograph of me and Jessie. We're sitting out the back of the set at Elstree in the garden of, it's like the garden of the house. She's sitting there with her big pregnant belly and we're laughing away. And I just remember the moment when I was saying, oh my God, Jessie, just having come out of that birthing scene, I just saying to her, oh my God, you're just so much braver than I ever was. And she's turning around to me and going, no, I don't think I was, Emily. I was having a real moment of connection. But just meeting someone who is so unafraid to go there, to look you in the eye in the moment and be utterly, utterly deeply transported by this scene that's happening. It was such a profound thing for me to be there for her. And, part of the reason I'm in that movie is because she wanted somebody there that she trusted, because she had two massive sequences, one of birth and one of death, which as an actor are pretty terrifying.
The biggies.
Requires the most of you.
Yeah, and I just felt like I could be there and, not just to be in the scene and do the scenes with her, but also to make sure she was okay.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing.
And of course with Paul Mescal, well, you've played his mother
played his mum
twice.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're hoping that tradition will continue.
Yeah.
And your stories are quite similar because he was Oscar nominated for After Sun quite early in his career. Did you talk about that? Your sort of slightly mirrored
recognise yourself a little bit, because it's kind of paralleled.
He's very sort of savvy in terms of how to connect with people and connect with the world. He's very incredibly articulate and funny, and he's one of those people who can be brilliantly self-deprecating and natural in front of a camera when it being him, which is never something that I found easy. So I was like, you go, kid, you got this, you don't need my advice.
Yeah.
But I think, it's been a massive journey for him, obviously. It's been through so much acclaim and so many things happening. And there's a moment when we were filming Hamnet, or recently said, so how's it like to have your own place? Just because he'd been living out of a suitcase for I don't know how long, for a very long time, just going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And just, knowing how to steady yourself and put down roots, and just watching that evolution has been amazing. But going to see him on stage as well, and like going, you are such a true actor, so hungry to get really to the bottom of what you had to do, and to watch him doing Shakespeare, like to have the courage to step up and go, I'm gonna be Shakespeare. And also having the smarts to know that it's not about what's been said and what's been written. It's about the words. It's about what body do you need to be occupying to have been the person who did that, who wrote that. Obviously in that safe space with Chloe as well.
Yeah. What was it like working with her?
She is remarkable. She's a witch. She's she just does things a bit differently, in the same way that Jessie does that thing of not knowing what it's going to be until it's happening. Obviously when you're a director and you have to have a structure, you have a script, and she came into this knowing that she's not a Shakespeare expert. She's not. It's a very she's from a culturally very different place.
Sometimes that can give you a better perspective.
Give you an honesty and a sort of freshness. But also she knew that, I think when they first offered it to her, before she'd read anything, she straight out said, no, it can't be me, because I don't, it's not my world. And then I think she just coincidentally had a meeting with Paul, and she was in the back of her head going, Shakespeare. And then she read the book, and she actually said that Maggie O'Farrell, who is another brilliant woman, writes in the same way that I see movies. The sort of the way she writes, I see things. And then she said, well, I will do this, but I have to do the screenplay with Maggie. I was very nervous to read the screenplay because I think, oh, I love this book so much and it has meant so much to me, and please don't have messed it up. And they hadn't.
Yes, yeah.
You know, they'd changed it quite a lot. They'd made it linear, but had, in a way, the cinematic value of it had allowed them to go deeper. And also, I think Chloe said, Maggie, you've written a book called Hamnet, and people are going to be expecting some Hamlet.
Yeah.
You know, so she's gone deeper into what that is and what that means.
Good to know that, you're giving the book lovers, doing them justice, because that's always quite difficult as well, isn't it? When you're adapting such a beloved piece of IP.
But also I felt, because I grew up with Shakespeare, and my mom quoted Shakespeare probably every day of her life.
Wow.
And I started going to the RSC when I was 7. I saw Judi Dench in Much Ado.
Oh, amazing.
When I was really young. Wow. You know, and I saw Alan Howard do Richard II and Henry V and loads of really iconic productions.
Yeah, no wonder you wanted to go into it if that's
and
what
then
you were watching.
My first job was at the RSC.
Yeah.
And I met my husband there, and he grew up in Stratford-on-Avon.
Oh, wow.
And his family ran the Undertakers on Sheep Street, which is this... Waterside is there where the theatre is, and that's at right angles is Sheep Street, and the business has been in the family for generations. You know, they have deeds for the building going back to 17 something, or I don't know. It's just like insanely connected with Stratford-upon-Avon.
Wow.
And so I felt a little bit of a sense of ownership.
Yeah, I mean, it's so deeply in your bones.
And then
at that point,
this Chinese American and 2 Irish people blew in. I mean, somebody asked me the other day, your character changes through the course of the story. And I just had to look at the 3 of them, really. And there was the change. It was like Hamnet is set at a time of society is deeply paranoid. It's like a police state. You've had your religion changed by the state, and it's treasonous to practice the religion that you were raised in. And she's married to a semi-violent drunk, very sort of sneery, judgy kind of a person, just cold. She's not Shakespeare's mum for no reason. And she meets Agnes, who's this magical creature, and it all changes her.
I wanted to ask a little bit more about God's Creatures, if that's okay, because I find it so fascinating that it was co-directed by 2 women, which is sadly a very rare occurrence. I mean, there's not enough female directors.
And we got 2.
Getting through, and you got 2. I'd just love to know what that experience was like.
Celia Davis, Anna Rose Homer, both deeply civilized humans, beautiful people. They were kind of like the same person in that after a take, one of them would go and talk to camera and one of them would talk to the actors, but there would be a sort of very quiet little moment between them, and then they would come over and it would be, everything was conducted very sotto voce. They never really had to confer that much because they were of the same voice. Their notes were always very profound and powerful and very respectful. They'd go up to the prop master, who was this giant Irishman, kind of big guy, and say, would it be all right if we could ask you to move this chair to over there? It's sort of
so
behaviour. Well, no, they're American. They're New Yorkers.
Sorry.
They're New Yorkers. But very, very civilized women, both of them. And so antithetical to mostly what happens on set, which is, a lot of yelling and can't do this, and action. And everybody's shaking. But it was so delicate. And the territory, the emotional territory that we had to occupy was so delicate. And so difficult. So they were amazing.
Similarly to Hamnet, your character goes through quite a shift in that film on where she sort of stands morally.
Yes.
How did you find sort of inhabiting a character that's choices you're not always totally sympathetic to, but they sort of change in quite a complicated way?
That's always a really interesting question for an actor, because you can't judge your character. You can't, and you try and put yourself in somebody's shoes and you go, well, what would I do in that situation? Would I turn my child in to the police? And you hope that you would. But also I had to sort of just become besotted with Paul Mescal, which wasn't difficult, and then go, would I turn this child over to the, it's a piece about a relationship that is unhealthy. And what a mother will allow herself to be blind to because she wants to rescue her son in some way. She wants to redeem him. She wants him to be okay, not to be the person that she suspects he might be. And that sets off a terrible chain of events.
There's been a lot of names of all these amazing people you've worked with. I'd love to ask about different film references throughout your career and the different films that inspired you, or maybe you were discussing with your all these collaborators as you were preparing for some of these films.
Well, I guess a very influential film for me, which I also discovered was also Stellan Skarsgård's favourite film when we worked together, because I didn't have a television when I grew up, but my parents would occasionally take me to see something like Fanny and Alexander, or, you know, just like really esoterically brilliant things.
Yeah.
But one of the things they took me to see, I was probably about 11, 12 maybe, was Les Enfants du Paradis.
Okay.
And because I was a avid reader of books, I was just always wanting to fall in love. I grew up in a very prescribed, religious, kind of strict situation. Long, boring story, but which I have talked through many times. You can look it up. But at night I would read. I would just read books voraciously. That was my passion, was stories. And this film, Marcel Carné film, was actually shot during the Second World War. But it's about theatre and actors, and it's about a mime artist who falls in love with great beauty, and it's about thieves and vagabonds, and it's a massive story of so many things. It's an absolutely brilliant film, and there's this sort of suicidal mime artist at the centre of it. It's an astonishing film. I was sort of besotted with the mime artist.
Yeah.
Interesting sidebar anecdote about that film is that the crowd scenes was shot during the Nazi occupation of Paris.
Oh my gosh.
And the crowd scenes, which are all kind of carnival, incredible carnival scenes of winding through the streets through these huge crowds. He's sort of trying to follow his lost love, and she's disappearing into the distance. The French resistance, they signed up as extras and they used it as a place to meet.
Wow.
Isn't that just incredible?
That's amazing.
So if you go away and watch that movie, remember that.
Fantastic. And yeah, you talked about the importance of kind of building these deep relationships and how that sort of informs your performance, and that feeling of safety that you create, that ability to be as raw and open in your performances. And one person you've worked with twice now, I believe, is Cillian Murphy on Small Things Like These and on Steve. I'd love to ask you about working with him and those roles that you played.
I didn't actually, obviously I've known his work for decades and admired him hugely, but I didn't actually know him until they called about Small Things Like These. And I read the script and just went, that is absolutely the most breathtaking story. I mean, the book that it's based on is like a breath, an exhale of a poem, of something that's so brilliant and so painful. And I guess connected to me and my childhood and me growing up in a restrictive religious situation where there were kind of charismatic spiritual leaders appropriating young lives and, all of that kind of stuff. The woman, the Sister Mary, who is a very, very powerful, manipulative controller of young lives and abuser of young women, really spoke to me. But also to get to go on the dance floor with Cillian Murphy and just it was, I just knew as soon as I read the script, this is going to be one of the great days of my acting life. That scene was only a day and I had a few other bits and pieces to do, so I wasn't there for very long. But oh my God, having to turn up knowing that he's been playing this character for weeks and it's a hugely immersive process for him, and I just had the one day to be so ready and so in it and so of it, and it was so beautifully done. The director, Tim Mealance, is wonderful. His texture is that intimate detail of emotional depth and what you're revealing, what you're hiding, what you don't even know you're hiding, all of those things. That's what he's interested in. And Cillian, having been incredibly friendly and affable and available off set, was, when I got on set with him, he was just that guy, and we were a million miles apart, and I was his enemy.
Yes.
And I don't know, it just kind of played itself. I just had the best time. And then they called me again and said, would you come and do this small part in Steve? And I was like, yeah, totally.
Go on then.
I loved that film. I loved all those kids. Yes, oh my God.
They're so brilliant.
Yeah. They are so brilliant. And I felt so happy for them and jealous for them because they had a proper experience of what an acting in a company should be like. They were there, they did kind of acting boot camp for weeks, setting up that company, clearly defining all those relationships and exactly what their history was, and making each one of those voices very, very real and individual and distinct. You don't get that. You just don't get that. And I was like, you guys don't know how lucky you are. This is such a good place to have this experience. And they were at boarding school. And there was an AD called Charles whose job it was to kind of corral them all and look after them all. And I just remember going, good luck.
Yeah, enjoy that one.
Because the energy
just bounces
coming
off
off them.
Well, yeah.
Oh my God. I had scenes with a couple of them, and watching them, one of them in particular, just like it was acting itself was revealing itself to him under my eyes. He was sort of living the moment and experiencing something he'd obviously hadn't kind of occurred to him until that moment, where how powerful it was and how powerful, and a light bulb of incredibleness just shining in front of me. But it was really a privilege to be there.
One thing that's very striking about all the performances in that film, it's a film about what's not said as much as about what is said. And I'm so interested what it's like to approach playing a character whose emotions are quite reserved and repressed, and how you balance that with some of the other things you were saying about acting being like giving yourself over totally.
Yeah, that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
I mean, finding where in the calibration of all those things where your character is, and what they have access to and what they don't have access to. That's the great thing about being a Brit in acting, is that you can, that sort of icy dripping with passive aggressive sort of totally cut off from your emotions comes really easily.
Don't know what you're talking about.
And those things are really fun to play. But every character, everyone you play has a relationship to that scale of how well you know yourself, how available you are to yourself.
Yes.
And that's always a great question to ask. Am I in touch with this or am I not? It's a really good way of going on that discovery. And also sometimes not knowing. And then, you think the character thinks they've got everything buttoned up and things can shock you. And, it's a fun palette to play with.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, Sister Mary, she's such a kind of Machiavellian character. And I know there online there's been a parallel to like The Godfather in the way that she has that power and exercises it over.
I mean, it's really people. An indictment of the relationship between the church and the state in Ireland in that time. And, however religious you were or not, everybody's life was controlled because the state and the church had a complete control over the education system. You had no choice. That was it. Everybody was raised in that way with that utter fear. And young women it was a currency of shame that was so powerful. And it wasn't just Ireland.
Yeah.
And the church bells you hear at the beginning and the end of the film kind of reminded me of what you were saying in the acting class about listening to the squeak of the and how your relationship to that sound changes. And I think as an audience, how we feel listening to the church bells at the beginning versus at the end, completely different,
Talking of those moments like the squeaky wheel and the church bells, is there a moment from a film that you're really glad that you saw in a cinema with an audience?
I mean, the recent one for me would be One Battle After Another. Watching that final scene, watching
the car chase
on a big screen was exhilarating.
But
sorry, I'm not trying to.
No, that's an amazing moment.
Not trying to put words in your mouth there.
Mine's the twist in Parasite. I went to the cinema twice to watch that. First,
when they start climbing up the wall and down in the basement, and you go, and what's happening? Going on? That is a great moment.
I went back to the cinema to watch it again to watch everyone else watching it for the first time.
Because you kind of have a grip on what's going on and where you are, and this is a film about the different stratas of this society and money and influence. And then this weird woman starts climbing up the wall in the
Yeah.
basement, and you go, oh my God,
Yeah.
I have no idea
Completely pulls the rug.
what's about to happen. That's a brilliant moment.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, you can steal that one. Nice
Thank
one.
you.
And do you have a favourite cinema?
I love the BFI, actually. I love going to see things at the BFI.
Yeah.
I like sort of taking my kids to see Muppets Christmas Carol at the BFI, and went
Nice.
and kind of
Yeah.
realising this is probably why most people end up being socialists, this movie. It's like,
Yeah.
get them young.
Yeah. And one of my favourite lines from
that,
any film, no cheeses for my Mises.
No cheeses
Yeah.
for my Mises.
Yeah.
I tell you, that favourite line from a movie.
Yeah, what's yours?
Is that Porco? No, it's Shakespeare. No, sorry. Is that Shakespeare? No, it's Porco. Do you know what that is?
No.
That is Porco Rosso. It's the Ghibli movie Porco Rosso, which
Oh.
is an absolutely... I love all those movies.
Yeah,
and
they're
I've
great.
kind of gone through them all with my kids. But yeah, is that Shakespeare? No, it's Porco.
And Emily Watson, do you have any cinema going etiquette? Any favourite cinema snack or particular place you've got to sit?
Oh, I always sit sort of nearer to the front than the back.
Okay.
It's sort of in the middle, if I can.
Nice.
Yeah, but that's partly about just being a bit blind these days.
Fair enough.
Salt, sweet, half and half is, my go-to.
And do you have a film that you've rewatched the most?
Probably a bit of a cliche and slightly embarrassing.
That's what we want.
Star Wars.
Nice.
Perfect.
Nice.
No, not
I
embarrassing
just think
at
it's
all.
a brilliant piece of
I
storytelling.
mean, you can't go wrong, can you?
And I love it.
Fab.
And also, Paul Thomas Anderson used to come up to me on set on Punch Drunk Love and say, "These are not the droids you're looking for."
Nice.
That was his acting note.
Oh my god! It must have been exciting to step into the world of Dune Prophecy. If you're a big sci-fi fan,
Yeah.
that must have been brilliant.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
really, that was pretty cool.
Oh, how
Yeah.
exciting! And do you have a film that you pretend to have seen but actually you haven't, and you want to use this podcast to come clean?
Probably loads of them. That's probably terrible. But no, but you're having those conversations, don't you? And people go, "Oh, in blah blah blah." And you go, "Yeah."
Oh, yeah.
No, there's probably a lot of. I've probably done a lot of that.
Cool.
But also, having grown up in my situation, just culturally, always feeling like I'm on the outside looking in, and I don't know all the things I'm supposed to know, and I haven't heard of all these people, and and sort of being thrown in the deep end when you're suddenly supposed to be an expert, and you're like, I have no clue what's going on.
Well, I think you can be forgiven for that, especially since you've now made so many of those films that are the ones to watch.
Oh,
So I
thank
think
you.
it all
Thank you.
balances out. We're so excited to celebrate your body of work, which has been amazing and
Thank
has
you.
earned you the Richard Harris
know.
Award. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a real privilege
It's a
to
pleasure.
chat to you.
It's lovely
Truly,
being
I
lovely to
know.
talk to you.
Thanks for listening to the BIFA Podcast, supported by Kia. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to get new episodes as they land. And please tell all of your friends about the podcast to help spread the word. We want all the film fans to be able to find us.
The BIFA Podcast is supported by Kia. The hosts are Karis, Aldridge and Joy Hunter. The show is produced by Daniel Audritt and Kat Butterfield for Audacious Productions and Joy Hunter for BIFA. The assistant producer is Bruno Atkinson. Director of Photography, Jude O'Connor. Audio engineers are Nathan Cooper and James Gibbons McGregor. Filmed at Fiction Studios. Special thanks to the BIFA team.